Hi guys, so super short video today, I think. It's usually how I intend anyway, but tend to drag on. So I'm out on the BSA. I thought I'd do a quick video just referencing people having an interest in, you know, buying a classic bike, building a classic bike, or anything of that nature, and you know, whether you should, whether you shouldn't, the reasons for and against, and what you should expect really. So I've been around classic bikes since I was a kid. You know, my dad had a fair few in and out the stable and that sort of thing, and the stories of the bikes he had that are now classic bikes that weren't at the time. So there's a very big difference between his level of expectation, trying to run one as a daily, you know, especially given that it was his only mode of transport, to run it as a classic bike, where you only take it out every now and then. But there's a flip side of that. So although you probably wouldn't run it as regularly, reliability is still a bit of a thing, evidently, because you know, you spend that kind of money on what is now a classic bike, and it's you want to take it out on the weekend or whenever you want it to work. So obviously there's things you can do to help improve that situation, but also when you build the bike, there's certain things. So to get into it, I built this particular bike based on stories I'd been told as a child and a magazine article that I had of a bike my dad built in the 70s. That's the premise of it. That was the whole motivation for building this bike. I always liked the look of it, always liked street scramblers, and then the idea of owning that particular motorcycle, which was a near impossibility because nobody knows where it ended up. The only option was to build it. But key thing to take from that is, once I'd done that, and if you were to build a classic bike, it's, in my view, you know, hindsight is 2020. In my view, I wouldn't say foolish, but misguided to think that you're going to build a classic bike, and unless the stars align, you're going to jump straight out on it, going to start enjoying it, riding it, and everything's going to be hunky-dory of the world. That's just not how it works, I'm afraid. It takes a lot of time, a lot of patience, a lot of heartache, and in some instances a considerable amount of money, to keep the things on the road and be able to enjoy what you've built. So I can only go off my own personal experience and the experience of people I know, but the story seems to be pretty similar for a lot of people. And I mean, this particular bike, for example, it's had 3 different ignition systems on it, from points to a boiler system to a brand new boiler system, which is a video on the channel of. It's had 4 different carburetors on it in various setups and various guises, because that's just what it took. It's had been with baffles, without baffles. I've had electrical issues. I've rewired it 3 times, and this is all with modern equipment, you know. So we're not blaming old antiquated Lucas stuff or stuff that's degraded. It's just the nature of the beast, and it's an ongoing maintenance project. You'll never get to a point where it's done, I don't think. That's just the way it is. And you're going to own a classic bike, unless you're going to pay a classic specialist to put it together and take that headache, which for me personally takes the fun out of it. But unless you're going to do that, you have to be prepared to take the rough with the smooth. So what I can tell you is the elements of that give you what is commonly referred to as the character, and I personally love it. I mean, I love this bike, I love the sound it makes, I love the way it rides. It's a challenge. It definitely doesn't ride like a modern motorcycle. You've got to give the gearbox a chance to warm up, you have to give it a chance to change gear. Sometimes it will say no, you can't have fourth gear, and you have to accept that. That's just the way it is. It's how the bike feels on the day. Now there's been a lot of modernisations within this bike, and there's still more things that I want to do to make it that bit more reliable, a bit more refined. But if you tried to build it to be the perfect machine, you could very easily, and not taken away from anything like that, but you could very easily turn it into, say, not quite, but a Japanese bike or something of that, you know, smooth power, constant delivery and that sort of thing. And that's not what I expect or what I want from this bike. So you have to take it for what it is. It's never going to be a bike I'm going to use every single day of the week. It's not built for that. But if you were going to build a classic bike, I think, unless you're going to go for like one of these modern classic inspired bikes like the modern Triumph, or, you know, go for a classic bike and put a more modern engine in it maybe. I think that's something you have to accept. Now, what I can say, for reliability and more distance, there we go, there was no fourth gear then. For reliability and longer distance, I opted to go in for the Thruxton, which comes back to my recent video talking about whether I should buy the Scrambler. Now I've since found out the Thruxton has what they call a 360-degree crank, which means some technical things with the engine as to when it fires, to make it a smoother running engine. I've since found out that the Triumph Scrambler has what they call a 270-degree crank, so the firing order is a bit offset, so it gives it a bit more of that burble note, the torque delivery is different, and as a result of that you get a bit more character. So for me, for a modern motorcycle, is why I'm now even more inclined to start looking at the Scrambler, the Triumph Scrambler, to try and get some of the elements of this classic street Scrambler into something that I know, if I want to do longer distance, want to go out to Wales, or, you know, go on a group ride with a lot of people or something that's going to be, and that I have no doubt now the way this is built, this bike would do it, but just something that I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to carry tools with me, I don't have to carry spares. I can build something a bit exotic and get out the road. So what I would say, if you particularly enjoy that kind of riding as well as just getting out for a quick run, my suggestion would be, if you're going for a classic, make sure it's a second machine, unless you're not riding that much. That's a different thing. There's definitely something about classic bikes. I mean, this, I'm here now, we're patting along 50 mile an hour on a country lane on an old British bike, and all is good with the world. Would I necessarily ride this bike to the other end of the country? Probably not. It's not to say that it wouldn't do it, but you know, you could do a good oil change, bit of prep work, make sure everything was as it should be, and I'm pretty sure you'd be okay. But for the peace of mind in my own head, I just couldn't do it. I wouldn't swap this bike for anything. I absolutely love it, adore it, you know. It was worth every second building it. It's worth every bit of time I spend continuing to try and improve the situation, you know, reliability and that sort of thing. But there's no two ways about it. it is a lot of work, a lot of heartache, and you've got to be committed to it, because if you go into it half-hearted or not fully expecting it, you know, you just set yourself up for massive disappointment. And that's something that I did in the first place. There have been many times with this particular bike where I thought, no, I've had enough. I can't keep wasting my time, my effort and my money and that sort of thing. And you do get into that mindset. It's very easy to do, but you've got to fight through it and keep going. And I think the only way I was able to do that is because it's not my only bike. So when the weather's good and you're thinking, God, I wish I could take the bike out, but it's in pieces or it's not being all that reliable, then at least you've got something else you can put the keys in, go and kind of decompress and, you know, still enjoy the hobby for its primary purpose. But yeah, so I definitely say get out, do it. If you're looking for a classic bike and that's what brought you to this video, go out and do it, but be realistic with your expectations. And if you're not in a position to build something from scratch, buy something part done, but be very careful in what you're looking at and take somebody who knows what they're looking at if you don't. It's one of the things. Or consider a modern equivalent, but still with some character, because that's the mistake I've made. Anyway guys, this has turned into a longer video yet again. I am sorry. I'm going to try and get better at this. Try to share those few thoughts with you. If you watch this long, click like and subscribe. Really helps the channel out. Really nice to have you guys here out on the bike. You know, it can be a lonely place, but taking you guys with me really helps, and it's keeping me out on the bike in the winter months. So thank you very much, and yeah, take it easy.